Welcome. My name's John Ellison. Logical Tech Digital is where I work, and I've got Carl Bennett with me here, who is the head of our mobile field force applications team. We're looking at Field Tracker, an application suite that is customised for enterprises, and at the moment we're focused on the real value for the organisation, for their field staff in particular. What does an app feel like? What does it do? How does it help the organisation? And in particular, Carl, I want to focus in this session on data accuracy and how do we check both on-site and off-site to make sure that we're eliminating the sources of errors that really cause organisations to lose confidence or lose productivity in their information that they're collecting. You and I have talked to many who talk about, even tens or hundreds of spreadsheets and clipboards and paper and trying to get back to the office and get things done before they go home. As I understand it, Field Tracker can eliminate, by using smart devices, eliminate a lot of those errors and issues. So tell me how that's achieved. Tell me how that's achieved for enterprises using Field Tracker.
John, I think you're describing one of the symptoms called death by spreadsheets. and that's very common. I've seen that a lot, where there's a huge amount of information that's being transcribed, often manually in the field on bits of paper, taken back to the office, rekeyed into spreadsheets, and then probably rekeyed several more times before it needs to get to where it's got to go. So really what we're talking about here is several-fold. It's one, capturing information in the field as quickly and simply as possible, but knowing that you've actually got it right. Now, how do you do that? There's several parts to that. One is you make sure the interface is as simple to drive as possible, that wherever possible you're picking from lists and you're avoiding having to use the virtual keyboard on these devices. So you're trying to just make it a tick and flick selection process, but you can't always avoid it. There are times where you actually have to key in numbers and so forth and capture readings. Now, there are various tools you can use. There's obviously the virtual keyboard. There's even voice you can use. You can transcribe the information captured from voice into text and into numbers. You can use that, and we do use that. But the important part about this is, how do you know the information's right? And that's a key to this, isn't it, John? That everybody's interested in accuracy, because there are big penalties and costs for having to go back out in the field and collect it again, both time, dollars, and travel. So one of the ways that we do that is we make sure that if you're going out in the field, we make sure the application has been pushed down to all the information we know about that particular site. So when you come to collect information, we can bring up graphs, tables, validation rules that apply to that specific site in those circumstances, so that we can either say, no, that data is not right because it's breached some rule, or that it looks unusual because this is anomalous because of past histories. Are you sure this is right? So you push that back to the user and say, look, hey, this looks a little bit dodgy. Are you sure this is right? And it gives an opportunity to correct it before going on and leaving that site.
So I'm aware of some systems that they'll do that if you're online, but with a lot of the field staff that we're supporting with Field Tracker, they might be out of reception range. So what happens then for them?
Look, that's absolutely crucial. The places that people go out in the field, there's very often places where there's just no communications at all. So to have an application that works only online is really going to be a failure very quickly. So with our application, we're able to make sure that all that information that's been pushed through is held on the device and is available to the device whether you're online or not. The only thing that changes, John, is just when you send the information back to the cloud web server. And you do that when you've got comms. And if you haven't, it doesn't matter.
So that's done automatically when you've got comms, so you don't have to worry about it. Yep.
I mean, absolute worst case, you start the run with communications, you have none until you come back, still works. Right. But I mean, that's not the usual case. You usually find you've got comms at one or more points out in the field, and the system will spit the information back and it'll be available in real time in that way.
Great. Well, I'm sure there's some operations managers who are thinking, well, that's fabulous, but how to make sure the data is accurate and integrated with our other systems? Because obviously this data has to be used and reported or decisions made from it. So with other systems we have to manage assets or report measurements, etc., flow rates or volumes or condition of assets that we have. How does Field Tracker handle that back-end type data accuracy?
Half the problem is of course collecting the data in the field and making sure you've got it right when you're on site. But once you've got that information, you've got it to your back-end systems, we now need to make sure that's integrated to your other systems, and so that there can be a flow-on of that information, so it can be further validated and incorporated to other reports and other processes where this data has to flow to. Now, if it's essential that's checked on the fly, that can actually be done, and you can have a response back to the phone to say, look, there's something untoward. Generally, you try to avoid doing too much of that because you want to be able to operate in an offline mode, so you need to be able to leave the site when you've completed your work. But that said, if you do need to get something back, whenever you have got comms, you can get information back to the device. And there are ways in which the staff back at the office can actually put things into the system so that they actually appear on the person's phone, so that when they reach a site, they can be warned of something in advance to say, look, I need you to do this extra task, or here's a reminder, or here's a hazard, or something, that can be actually pushed to the phone. So that way we actually have that two-way information through the application.
Handy tool. Very good. So thanks, Carl. And for organisations, obviously, data is like gold. It's part of what organisations, particularly managing assets and utilities, mining companies and transport companies, knowing that your assets are recording and being able to make decisions for those management of those assets based on data that's accurate is critical. So a tool like this, clearly Field Tracker is a great tool to provide both the front end for that data accuracy and also the back end. Give Carl and the team a call. Thank you.